Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Hoffman, and I'm the author of The Second Ending, and I'm very pleased today to participate in a Q&A with the Boulder Bookstore. I have been buying books at the Boulder Bookstore for almost 40 years, ever since I was a freshman at the University of Colorado. And I started in the fall of 1984, and my son is also a graduate at the University of Colorado, so I've been in and out of town quite frequently. And I always stop at the bookstore, and I love all the different levels and all the different rooms. I'm usually in there for a couple of hours buying some books. Okay, so could you please give us a synopsis of your book? Yes. The Second Ending is about a former child prodigy, a former piano prodigy, who her name is Prudence. And after she and her husband drop her youngest child off at college, she has this midlife crisis. She had grown up very famous from the age of 3, and her trajectory kind of took the same paths as a lot of child stars. Her grandmother exploited her and took all of her money. And by the time she hit adolescence, she was no longer a novelty. So she kind of burnt out and stopped performing. She ran away from home, and she made a nice living writing commercial jingles. And one in particular becomes very famous. So when the novel starts at the midlife crisis, Prudence sort of thinks for the first time about death, and that she does not want to be remembered as being this burnt out child star. She wants to try to prove herself finally as a true artist. And to do that, she goes on a competition show like American Idol, only it's dueling pianos. And our competitor, Alexei Petrov, has problems of his own. And so we watch these two prepare throughout the novel to confront their fears and their insecurities and these obstacles as they prepare to face off against one another. So, what inspired this book? A couple things inspired this book. I was really fascinated with the idea that a midlife crisis could have a positive effect, that this profound dissatisfaction with life could push us to seek our true potential, to self-actualize. I think we, a lot of times when we reach middle age, we have long abandoned the dreams we had in our youth. So I want to kind of explore the concept of resurrecting a dead dream. And there's other characters in the book who also have dreams and go after them. The other thing that inspired this book was back in 2008, I was a journalist and I wrote for the Arizona Republic. And I interviewed the playwright, the Broadway playwright, Dale Wasserman, and he had written Man of La Mancha. And the most famous song from that musical is a song, "The Impossible Dream," and it was quite famous. It was played all over the radio, and it was part of commercials. I think there was a coffee commercial, and so I asked Mr. Wasserman what was the impetus behind that song, and he said it's just the dream is impossible. The goal is unattainable, but the power is in the dream. And it's a drive that engenders the person dreaming it so that he won't give up. And I really love that. And after the interview, I thought about that a lot. And we have to find satisfaction on a day-to-day basis. So when you're working toward a dream, it's at the end of the day, what did you accomplish in just that day? And so I loved that. I think the two ranch hands and John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men embody that concept perfectly. You've got these two guys who have nothing. They don't have any family. They have no permanent home. They don't have very much money. They just have the clothes on their backs, and they go from ranch to ranch. They work for a couple weeks or a month or so. they get paid, and then they go into town and they blow all their money and they go on to the next ranch and do the same thing. And it's kind of this really bleak existence. But what makes them do it? What makes them get out of bed every day? And it's because they have these dreams. They live for this dream. And their dream is to own a little piece of land and plant some vegetables, have a little garden, raise some chickens. And Lenny's real dream is he simply just wants to tend the rabbits. And that they love talking about this dream, and they talk about it all through the book. So that's sort of what I wanted to do as well. As Prudence is working towards this goal, but each day changes her a little bit. She finds these little things on a micro level, and so that when the day's finished, she feels satisfied, like she's accomplished something that day, even though it's minor. Next question. Do you play the piano, and did you play at all while writing this book? Yes, I do play the piano. I started formal piano lessons around the age of 5, and I've been playing ever since. And when I started writing the novel, I went into my little music library and I selected pieces that I wanted to write about and that I wanted readers to be aware of. And I would take whatever piece I was writing about that day, I would go to my piano, and I would have a pad of paper and a pen next to me, and I'd play the piece, and then I would write about how I felt, what emotions I was feeling while I was playing the piece. Did it tap into any kind of memory? And also, when writing about music, I wanted it to be very concrete so that the reader could almost hear the music as they were reading about it. So I had to write about it very concretely. And so I think there's a line in there that the chords sounded like clock chimes. That's very concrete. So a reader knows what clock chimes sound like. So they get an idea of what the piece sounds like. Did you do any research into the lives of child celebrities? Yes, I did. I watched quite a few documentaries. I read there's a lot of memoirs, child star memoirs out there, and a few prodigies, prodigy memoirs. One of them was Long Long. I read Long Long's memoir. And I was looking for a pattern into how these children lived their lives. And they all pretty much had the same trajectory. And they burnt out, except not Long, but a lot of them had burnt out. A lot of them had spent their money. It was a pretty hard road. But Long he's a great pianist. And he is still very successful. His childhood, though, growing up in China, there was a lot of pressure to make it as a pianist. And it got pretty crazy. But I just love him. He's got a great spirit. But I did study him and things he had to go through. Can you tell us about your writing process? Yes. I wake up between about 4:30 and 5 a.m. every morning, and I get a cup of coffee, take the dog out, and I shut the door to my office, and I read a little bit, and I'm usually reading something that's close to what I'm writing. So the second ending is told with an omniscient point of view. So I read several novels with an omniscient point of view. And then the next 2 to 3 hours are the best writing of the day. It's before anybody gets up. There's no distractions. There's no phone calls. No one's coming to the door. I don't have to answer any emails. So I get a pretty solid 3 hours in, 2 to 3 hours in. And then after that, I break and I feed the dog and I eat breakfast and I practice my piano. And then when I come back to my desk, it's usually like fixing paragraphs or doing research, whatever else has to be done. But I do write every day. Is there anything else you want us to know about your book? Yeah, my hope is that this inspires readers to go after their own dreams. I think all of us have a hidden talent, and I think that hid- hidden talent can ignite a dream. And in this post-pandemic world, I think a lot of us during the pandemic sort of kind of reevaluated our lives, and I want this to inspire people. Um, And also, I wanted to make people laugh. Um, After the last 3 years, I think we could all use some humor. And so I tried to do that in the novel. I tried to balance some of the heavy themes with humor. And I hope it makes you laugh. What are a couple books you read during the pandemic that you really loved? So many and so hard to narrow it down, but I'll try. I loved Julie Atsuka's The Swimmers. She's just a wonderful writer, really wonderful prose, a great storyteller. I've read everything she's written, so this was a good one, and I love the book. It's a very cute book. The other one was Matt Haig, The Midnight Library. This is something that I probably would have never picked up, but I'm so glad I did. And I thought about this story. It was a very resonating story. And I thought about it for a long time after I finished it. It was wonderful, great book. Uh, this one, Anthony Doerr's Cloud Cuckoo Land, another writer who I've read everything he's ever written from his collection of short stories, All the Light We Cannot See. This one was really wonderful. He's just his prose is so lyrical. So I really like this one. And I just want to share what I'm reading now because I love it so much and I can't put it down. And it is The Guest by Emma Cline. Great writer, great storyteller. Just kind of a really haunting prose. And I love it. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit from the second ending, give you guys an idea of what it's about. The first chapter is called Prelude in E minor. There were no more children at home, no more overflowing laundry hampers, no more backpacks in the foyer. It was just the two of them. Well, three if you included Mrs. Winter, which Prudence did. A week ago, Prudence and Stuart had dropped their youngest child off at a prestigious Midwestern college with a clock tower, granite buildings, and stone statues. Their eldest was already attending a prestigious East Coast college with its own clock tower, granite buildings, and stone statues. Now that they were back home in the Southwest, back in the desert, Prudence wept at tiny boxes of raisins in the grocery store. She reached for old bath toys in the closet. Catching a whiff of baby lotion was like being tugged into a time machine. The absence of her daughters unmoored her. She had not expected how much she would miss those beautiful creatures who could delight her one minute and aggrieve her the next. A child's world, Prudence had discovered when her girls were young, is only as large as what is around them. Her daughters never cared about their mother's storied childhood, how she had played for two sitting presidents and had tea with Isaac Stern. They cared only that she could make mud pies and killer vegan tacos. Prudence gave her children everything she had been denied. She read them stories, taught them card games, and held them when they were sad. She nurtured them precisely so they would become independent adults. But the opposite had happened to Prudence along the way. She had grown dependent on them. Prudence had tried to be brave the day she and Stuart dropped Becca off at college, but as she looked around at the cinder block dorm room, a terrible thought occurred to her. She would never see Becca again. You okay, Mom? Promise me you'll come back for Christmas and summer breaks. Only if you don't turn my bedroom into a sewing room. Oh, wait, you already have one. She hugged her mother. Of course I'll come back home. Out in the hallway, Prudence could hear new roommates chattering while moms and dads lugged boxes and suitcases up the stairwells. The cheerful chaos depressed her almost as much as the worn linoleum floors. How can they all be so happy? She had to stop herself from popping her head out the door and yelling, "Which one of you has an extra Xanax?" In an effort to delay the inevitable, Prudence began taking clothes from Becca's bags and arranging them in the wardrobe. Mom, I want to do it myself. Just let me. Stuart placed a soft hand on his wife's shoulder. It's time, Prudence. We have a flight to catch. She squeezed Becca's shoulders. If you cry, I'll cry, her daughter said. Prudence wanted to do more than cry. She wanted to let out a guttural wail that would echo down the concrete hallway. Instead, she said, Don't forget me. To which Becca replied, Well, that would be hard to do, Mom. Now, because she didn't have to prepare dinner or run anyone to ballet lessons, Prudence lay listlessly in her chaise by the pool, where she indulged her new obsession with death. The morbid thoughts had come without warning. She couldn't talk herself out of them. It was like falling in love suddenly and with the wrong person. It became a sickness, a fever, an illness with no known cure. She would die. Her memorial would attract gawkers. It wouldn't rain like it does in the movies. It'd be ridiculously hot. People would wear shorts and flip-flops. They'd bring their stupid water bottles and take pictures on their phones. They'd snap up those cheap plastic dolls on eBay first chance they got. Prudence at the piano, they were called. Her grandmother had arranged for them, like that awkward Dick Cavett interview when she was 8. He had asked her what her favorite song was, and she had replied, Boogie Fever. Everyone laughed, of course, because he meant what was her favorite song to play. Prudence would be remembered for that interview, which racked up nearly 3 million views on YouTube. I'm going to die, having been merely a circus act, she said to Mrs. Winter. The 8-pound Shih Tzu cocked her head, and Prudence nodded the way you do when you're in the company of someone who just gets you. She stared out into the cinnamon-colored desert at the cholla and the brittle bush. It had been a rainless summer. The hot wind blew, the mesquite trees rattled, the yard was kindling. It just needed a spark. Thank you for inviting me to this Q&A. I had a lot of fun sharing my novel with you and talking about how this came about. Thank you so much, and I'm excited for you guys to read my book.